every Canadian election, I approach all the different party leaders and ask if they will do an interview/hip flip. Mark Carney did the hip flip. Jagmeet Singh did the hip flip. Coming up, Elizabeth May. But I'm still waiting to hear back from Pierre Poilievre if he will do an interview. I won't give up. I'll keep trying because that's what I do.
Nardwuar. 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 Nardwuar.
Who are you?
Elizabeth May.
Elizabeth May, welcome to Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada.
Whoa, it's a long ferry ride from where I live in Sydney, Vancouver Island, British Columbia.
Right off the bat, Elizabeth, I have a gift for you.
Oh my God,
a spoken word David Suzuki record.
Oh, how marvelous.
From 1981, him narrating Space Child.
Well, we're all Earthlings, but I like that David has a record for space children.
What can you say about David Suzuki?
Well, the first time I met him, it wasn't good. I was a Cape Breton Island waitress and environmental activist, and I was trying to track him down, and I heard he was in Halifax. And in those days, you could just call information and call every hotel in Halifax and say, David Suzuki's room, please. And then I got lucky, and I found a place that said, we'll put you through. So I knew I'd found him. I'd found him in his hotel, and I was calling to beg him for help fighting aerial insecticide spraying over our forest by airplanes. Anyways, this is probably around 1975, and he came to the phone and said, "Who is this? You just got me out of the shower." And so I thought, oh, this isn't a good start. But I continued, and he's very, very kind and very committed, and he did help. But I thought, oh my God, I've gotten David Suzuki out of the shower, and he's mad at me. So it wasn't, but we're very, very close friends. And I'm very, very lucky that this is the thing about being Canadian, which you already know. Canadians will meet everybody they love eventually. People you sort of have hero worship situations like me with David Suzuki, bestest friends. It's amazing, right?
And now you can hear his voice.
Oh, yes.
From 1981.
Yes, and I did hear his voice in 1981, but as the first time I heard his voice in 1975 was, who the blank is this you got me out of the shower?
Thank you, Crane Taylor.
Crane Taylor? Holy mackerel. Do you know Crane Taylor? No. How do you know Crane? He was a
Thank you, Crane Taylor, for universal health care.
Yeah, well, he was a kid a grade ahead of me, and he gave a speech against healthcare as his public speaking thing. How on earth did you find that out? And I said, well, no, that's not right. And I remember he banged on the podium. That's socialism. Well, this was at school in the United States. That's socialism. We have to stop it. And I was like, universal health care sounds like a really good idea to me, being also in school in the United States and wondering why we didn't have health care. Nah.
So thank you, Crane.
Well, thank you. He got me very committed on the healthcare file. Not that, I was only I think he was in grade 8 and I was in grade 7 around the time of this ferocious public speaking contest debate.
And growing up, you one time heard John Kenneth Galbraith in a living room?
Oh, I knew him.
In a living room?
Well, many times in living rooms because he was of course, an amazing Canadian and an amazing economist and someone whom I love to quote. But my mom, now my mom was always an activist. I grew up with an activist. And she decided that the best way to stop the war in Vietnam was to elect Democratic candidates. So this was one of many living room events where we would invite, say, Paul Newman. He came to a lot of our events, or John Kenneth Galbraith, or for that matter, Leonard Bernstein, or Arthur Miller. I had a kind of a constellation of major celebrities that were in my mother's roster of who can come help us raise money for Eugene McCarthy and then for George McGovern. This was an event I'm pretty sure, thinking back how old I was then, was for George McGovern. And John Kenneth Galbraith was quite late. And so my mother fell back on what she did best, which was, come on, Elizabeth, help me sing some songs. Let's entertain people. Is there a piano? My mother was a pianist. So we just kept people entertained till John Kenneth Galbraith came, and then we could all be inspired.
Amazing. In the living room.
The living room. Yeah, well, a lot of people you meet in living rooms, and that's my favorite place, actually, or kitchens to meet people.
What gets you about this era of Rita McNeil from 1975, the Sir in 75?
Well, at this point in Rita's life, she was not everybody's favorite grandmother. She was a rampant, fierce feminist and a campaigner. So I had a son, I had a daughter, and I had to do something better. Anyway, she was very fierce, and she only sang barefoot, and she was singing at the Sydney pub for International Women's Day in Sydney, Cape Breton. And that's when I found out from a very drunk woman lawyer, also from Sydney, that I should be going to law school because I was a good debater, because she'd heard me debating the pulp company executives on the radio. Oh, this is a wonderful find.
Well, actually, I have a gift for you. A Rita record from 1983.
Yeah.
And check out the back. Where is this from? What record label is it on?
It's on the record label of the CBC and the College of Cape Breton, University College of Cape Breton Press. Fantastic. Which is in Sydney, of course.
Where you were with your friend Liz.
Well, yeah, I was, except I was at Sydney, yes, but I wasn't at the university. I was at the pub when I saw Rita. But this is a find and then some. You know, I miss Rita. You know, she was so wonderful and she was so humble. And she used to say to audiences, people come up to me and say, did you ever imagine you'd get so big? And then she'd say, I do try to diet. No, she was a hoot and a lovely, lovely, kind and wonderful person. Yeah.
And you mentioned the CBC.
Joella Folds is singing backup her. Joella's one of the ones who founded the Celtic Colours, which is now a really major part of a Cape Breton year. It's bringing tourists to Cape Breton in the fall for Celtic music. So, yeah, this is, wow.
And that's a gift for you.
Oh, wow. Oh, thank you.
And a CBC logo, too. Isn't it interesting?
Well, I'm a big CBC supporter, unlike our friend Pierre. But I noticed, yeah, we support the CBC for sure. And a lot of the great, this is one of my favorite friends too, Leon Dubinsky, who wrote this song, One Love, but he also wrote We Rise Again. Leon's family was also, there was a whole bunch of multicultural melting pot stuff in industrial Cape Breton. A lot of workers came from Eastern Europe. They came from the Caribbean to work in the steel mill. So anyway, Leon Dubinsky's family, the Dubinsky family, are fantastic. Oh, it's arranged by Scott. See, I'm going to get lost in the fine
That's
print.
amazing. All these Cape Breton references.
Oh, yeah, all my old friends. Well, not all of them, because you couldn't fit all my old friends on one record label.
Boom.
I've got a lot of, but I'm very, they always say, you know, you can take the girl out of Cape Breton, but you can't take Cape Breton out of the girl. So, yeah.
Well, that's a gift for you.
Oh, wow. You're too generous. And I can't get, everybody you interview says, your research. Oh my goodness. Do you have like 1 million people on your research staff?
Well, you're Elizabeth May. We have to know.
Oh, but look at Rita as a young thing. Isn't she adorable? Anyway, miss her. I miss her. She's from Big Pond, you know.
And I was curious, what can you say about this record, Elizabeth? About Tunagate 1985. What was Tunagate?
I can say that was a put-up job to get rid of one of the really great red Tory conservationists. So John Fraser he went on to be Speaker of the House. He was Minister of Environment under Joe Clark. And that's when I first met John Fraser and knew he was the real deal environmentalist. And the people at Department of Fisheries and Oceans had decided, and Health Canada had decided, that they didn't like the look of some tuna from New Brunswick. And then, of course, John, being a thorough kind of guy, insisted on seeing the studies that had said there was something wrong with this tuna, because it wasn't one of your primo labels. It was cheap tuna. Anybody who was buying tuna knew at the time that was cheap tuna. So John Fraser discovered that they didn't have any actual tests, but the inspectors went in and sniffed. And if they didn't like it, they'd say, so the whole town was going to go under for lack of the tuna plant. Here I am in 2025 defending what happened to John Fraser in, I think, 1983, maybe.
Brian Mulroney eventually said,
He fired him.
I didn't know.
Oh, I didn't know. What happened was, when Brian Mulroney went out into any sporting event, as soon as people saw him, they started chanting, tuna, tuna. So that became a really great way for people who were sick of Mulroney to express their displeasure, was to chant tuna. But in fairness, I wish John Fraser hadn't been fired from that cabinet, because he was one of those true, now, species at risk even at the time, but now extinct species of progressive conservative.
7:20 a.m.
Yeah, this this last week, April 16th, yes.
No Jonathan.
No greens. No greens. And
What the hell? 7:20 a.m.
And-
will live on.
Well, for me, it was 4:20 a.m. because I was here in my riding in Saanich Gulf Islands. I'm very angry, appalled. We will continue to pursue what happened because we know that the executive director of the Debates Commission broke their own rules. And of course, they knew the night before. We now know this from many journalists. They knew the night before that they weren't going to let us participate in the debates, although they'd correctly reviewed all the files and said we met all the conditions they set out in advance. And then they decided to say no greens. And Jonathan Bedno, who would have wiped the floor with the others, I couldn't wait to see him in those debates. He's a lot younger than me, smarter, and very articulate in both official languages. And I couldn't wait to see him in the debates. And the others couldn't wait to make sure we didn't get to speak.
I was curious. What can you say about Flora MacDonald?
My hero, flat out, one of the people who brought the greatest level of grace and dignity and decorum to Parliament. Solid, and just like she was a Kipretner, although she represented Kingston and the Islands and Ontario riding in Parliament. But I remember when I said, you look at these famous people and you think, that's my hero, Flora. So for me to become friends with Flora, she would have me when I wasn't elected yet, or even after I was elected, and I'd go see her in her apartment in Ottawa. And I remember one time, she made me a lovely quiche lunch, and then she was slightly limping when she went back in the kitchen. And I said, Flora, what's happened? She said, oh, it's nothing. She was about 83 at the time. I just twisted, it's annoying. I twisted my ankle climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. So annoying. Hero stuff here. Flora. And this is...
The first female minister.
Yes, and the first woman to run for party leadership. Oh, and Joe Clark won and she lost, but she to the day she died, we'd talk about it. And I'd say, Flora, you've got to join the Green Party, please. She said, well, I can't ever join that Conservative Party. I can't join the Conservative Party. So like a lot of former progressive conservatives, she was a political orphan but she was just, nothing, no one could say a bad word about Flora. I never met anyone who could say a bad word about Flora. She was an epitome of integrity and kindness and good posture. My God, she never slouched. She was like ramrod straight in Parliament, like shh. And I used to think that all the other parliamentarians around her were like a group of yapping dogs. And there's Flora standing firm and explaining things. She was the Minister of External Affairs under Joe Clark. Oh my, fine, fine person.
Elizabeth, I have a gift for you right here.
These are very rare. You know this. You can't find these anywhere.
We have a gift for you, South Moresby.
Oh, yes.
Could you explain? Who is this?
This is Bill Vander Zalm, who was the Premier of British Columbia. And it's when she became a friend of mine, Pat Carney, who was also in Mulroney's cabinet. And when I knew her then, I was just terrified of her. But we became very good friends before she died. She became one of my constituents because she lived on Saturna Island. Bill Vander Zalm said to Pat Carney, we were trying to stop the logging, which we succeeded in doing thanks to the leadership of the Haida Nation. In 1980, it was a 12-year campaign to stop the logging. Canada's Galapagos, the forests of Haida Gwaii, old-growth forest. But Pat said to me, Bill Vander Zalm said to me one time, Pat, there's trees up there more than 1,000 years old. They should have been logged long ago. So it's kind of a political miracle that between Bill Vander Zalm and Brian Mulroney, but with the work of David Suzuki particularly, that's when we became friends, and the Haida Nation and a whole lot of Canadians who cared about preserving the Canadian Galapagos, we can visit them by going to Guayahanas Reserve National Park, which is extraordinary.
Well, that is a gift for you to relive those memories.
It's the kind of thing one could never imagine, even as a gift or a curio. But there you go. Hello, Bill Vander Zalm. Yes.
Dory whistles.
My imaginary playmate as a child. Did you have an imaginary playmate? I know I'm supposed to interview you, but imaginary playmates are a thing, right? So Dory Whistles was my imaginary playmate. She was a lot older than me. In my head, my imaginary playmate when I was about 5 was in her early 40s and had 7 children. I only remember her son, Charlotte. And Dory whistles when I became someone who was busy doing things with no undergrad degree and fighting budworm spraying and typing out great briefs in my kitchen in Cape Breton on an old typewriter. And I wanted to look more official. So as I finished typing any letter I wrote, at the bottom, I'd put, which was the custom in the old days, I put my initials in capitals, E-M, colon, small case D-W, for my secretary, Dory Whistles. Talk about loyalty from an imaginary playmate. She stuck with me all that time.
Well, I was thinking, like, imaginary playmate, whistle stops, and actually I have a gift for you, a Royal Hudson record from 1976, because you did some campaigning, didn't you?
I still do. I just did a whistle stop tour from Montreal to Moncton in this 2025 election campaign, visiting our candidates along the way. But yeah, the trains of this country are now best understood as antiques. We need to actually have modern trains like they have in Europe. That'd be pretty cool. But I love traveling by train. And I am, in fact, and I think no one's going to break this record, the first political party federal leader to campaign by train since John Diefenbaker.
Have you been on a Royal Hudson?
No, I've never. No. I mean, yeah, the trains are antique enough. I mean, the train cars that we have on the Canadian that run from Vancouver to Toronto. My husband, who's 77, remembers taking those trains when he was 6 and 7 years old, traveling with his parents back and forth across the country. Same equipment. So, but not the Royal Hudson. I never did get to travel on the Royal Hudson.
From North Van to Squamish.
It'd be and we definitely need that route back again, because imagine how many cars would take off the highways heading down to sea to sky country.
So here are some train sounds for you.
Oh, I can't tell you.
You are riding the Royal Hudson there.
Well, we should resurrect the Royal Hudson so that the thrilling sounds of the most exciting train in the world today, which would be crossed out yesterday, a long time ago.
Elizabeth May, the rock and roll band Sloan.
I love them. How do you know I know Sloan? They played the New Glasgow Festival when I was living in New Glasgow, and I went down and got all their autographs. They're fantastic.
Because Chris of Sloan,
Yes.
his partner, Rebecca,
Yes,
is distantly related to Meghan.
Leslie. No,
Meghan Mitt.
Megan Markle.
Meghan Mitt.
Megan. Oh,
Meghan Mitten.
Oh, Megan Mitten, our MLA from Sackville, New Brunswick. I was getting thrown by the Megan thing. I was saying, no, not really. Yeah, Chris of Sloan is an amazing singer and composer, and I didn't know his wife was related to Megan Mitten.
And shout out to Meghan.
Oh, wow, shout out to Megan. I saw her the other day, apropos my earlier comment that I did a whistle stop from Montreal to Moncton. Then we had an electric car drive us to Fredericton, and we had a rally for our candidate there, Pam Allen Levant, and Megan introduced me, and I had no idea until Megan introduced me. You know, she won by 12 votes, and I convinced David Suzuki to endorse her that time. And I said, David, it's because of you Megan got elected. He said, oh, no, he's very modest, and he doesn't like hearing praise. No. I said, David, she won by 12 votes. I think your endorsement made a difference. So Megan Mitten has now been reelected handily, and the New Brunswick Greens are fantastic. So the brush with fame of being related to Rebecca, who's Chris's partner, I didn't know.
Distantly.
Oh, wow. Let's just close that distance. They're besties. They're never apart.
Do you know Neil Young at all?
Yeah. Neil just sent me an email saying he absolutely wants to do a shout out on social media to help me because he gave an endorsement to Mark Carney. So I don't know how he's going to do it. Maybe this is it. But Neil said, yeah, absolutely, Elizabeth, you got it. Let's make sure people know to vote green for you. And Paul Manley, send me the list of people that we can. So he's going to do something. Yeah, I know. It's the weirdest thing, isn't it? As I said, Canada's a very small place and like a village, like a family. And anybody you really admire and want to meet, eventually you meet them. And sometimes the people you don't want to meet, you meet them too.
Well, Elizabeth May, I was wondering, this right here is the
hip flip.
Is a hip flip game. Now, Paul Martin did the hip flip game.
I know. And Jean Chrétien. Mark Carney. And Jagmeet Singh.
Jack Layton did the hip flip game.
Yes, and my daughter also knew Jack. I knew Jack well. I first got to know Jack when he was Toronto City Council. And I'm not surprised he could do the hip flip game.
Whoa! Oh my God! Now, Stephen Harper did not do the hip flip. His security carried me away.
It was his mistake. His legacy would have been so much more commanding for youth in Canada if he only was known for doing the hip flip game.
This is kind of fun. This is, whoa! Stephen Harper, please, will you do the hip flip? You guys don't have to carry me. So the question arises, will you, Elizabeth May, do the hip flip with me?
I will, and I hope I don't fail. Because I have, or I could be bionic at it. I've got 2 artificial hips. We're going to give it a go.
Why should people care about Elizabeth May? Why should people care?
They shouldn't. They should care about the things that I try to do for all earthlings, all creation. They should care about democracy. They should care about a voice that's honest all the time and speaks truth to power. They don't have to care about me. They just have to care about themselves.
Anything else to add to the people out there at all, Elizabeth May?
Well, please vote green. We got kept off the debate stage, but you can't keep us off hip flip games. So we've arrived.
Well, thanks so much, Elizabeth. Keep on rocking in the free world.
Rocket in the free world.
And do. Yeah!
Shave and a haircut, 2 bits. I remember the original jingles. So much Cape Breton on this show.